Yeah, you can kind of take your pick at what you want to blame for today's loss. You have to score more than one against Bryce Elder, but it's kind of like the Spider-Man meme. I feel like the Braves lineup was pointing at each other going, we got to score more than 0 runs against Miles Mikolas. You had two pitchers who had bad stats coming in. Both of them looked pretty good today, and so you get that kind of pitcher's duel that comes down to the bullpens in the end. Yeah, you got to put a little on the offense. That this was a game that you score 5 runs or so, you have a good chance because Miles Mikolas is usually going to give up 3 or 4 runs. You got to be able to support that. It happens today that he didn't give up the 4 runs. The bullpen did by itself as he was scoreless through 6. I just find it tired that we have to talk about Oliver Marmol's management of a bullpen when it didn't matter who he brought in, unless his name was Kyle EveryDeahy, which is what I'm going with for the
That's what you're
Kyle
going
Leahy
with for
nickname.
Kyle.
Yeah, because he pitches every day.
Yeah, he needs
Kyle
to.
EveryDeahy.
He needs
All
to
3
now.
games in this series, he came in and was scoreless. If your name's not Kyle EveryDeahy or the really that's it. Like Ryan Helsley pitched yesterday, but it was the case where you had to get some work for him because he hadn't pitched in so long. So basically, if you're not Kyle Leahy, you didn't do your job this series. And today in particular, every other reliever that Oliver Marmol turned to didn't get it done. So is it the order that he brings them in that determines it, or is it kind of hearkening back to a favorite phrase that I think it was producer Nick who had said he had never heard of this phrase before I used it at one point last baseball season or whenever it was. Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
I've never heard of it either before that.
This was you?
No,
you had no idea?
So, come on.
It was Nick, but I was being trained to produce. I was in the studio
You were
with
in the room.
Nick. I had never heard that in my entire life. There was another one, that same show, that was really bad that he hadn't heard of.
Yeah, we started to maybe have to mark down producer Nick's like little idioms that he had never heard in his life. But that was one that I didn't think was too far. And you can understand it, right? The Titanic is going down no matter where you're sitting on that ship. If you're staying on that ship for too long, that sucker is sinking and you're going down with it. So whatever order you want to put those chairs in doesn't make a difference. The Cardinals bullpen was blowing this game today. I guess the one argument you would have is we didn't see Matt Swanson in this series. He's the younger reliever, came over originally in the Paul DeYoung trade a couple of years ago and had some good numbers as a back-end reliever in the minors. Came up and had one appearance last week, and then we haven't really seen him since. This is not new, though. Like, it takes a little bit of time for Oliver Marmol to warm up to a reliever and trust him in those key spots. And you haven't had a bunch of spots where you could just bring a guy in to get him some work and see what he's all about. Do I think they should have been maybe a little more proactive when it comes to Matt Swanson, to where by the time you get to today, you could have maybe had a better idea as to whether or not you wanted to throw him into the fire? Yeah, ideally that would be true. But mostly, my approach to this is I can't blame Oliver Marmol for the way that he managed the bullpen today, considering the names that were in the bullpen. John King comes into a spot that there's 2 lefties due up. Now, they do pinch hit for one of them, so he only faces one lefty in Michael Harris, who gets the base hit that ties the game in the 7th inning. But it was a lefty situation is what you were looking for. Your lefties are Jojo Romero, who we'll get to in a minute, John King, who pitched in the spot, and Steven Matz, who went 2 2/3 yesterday, 39 pitches. He wasn't going to come into today's game. He was going to need the day off after throwing almost 3 innings yesterday. Very normal. You don't have any other lefties, so it's John King's spot. Like, it's not controversial to suggest that John King is a member of the Cardinal bullpen, and therefore he has to pitch in that situation. Okay, he gives up the run. Kyle EveryDeahy comes in and has the rescue mission where he's able to keep things right there, record 2 outs to get out of the 7th inning and keep you tied. 8th inning, somebody's got to pitch the damn thing. It's not Oliver Marmol that's, going to be able to pull the right strings if everybody he turns to can't get the job done. He goes for Jojo Romero because that's the spot where he's your left-handed setup guy, and it's the 8th inning, and it's time for Jojo to go pitch. Doesn't get it done. It's his 4th time in a row where he flat out has not gotten the job done. What has to happen there? Somebody's got to come in and rescue him. Phil Maton, unavailable, I believe it was said by Oliver Marmol postgame. I didn't hear it with my own ears, but that's what I was told through the grapevine, that Ollie said that on the postgame, and I, of course, I didn't see it, so I don't know for sure. But that's what I'm to believe based on the way that he managed the situation. Surely it just seemed like Maton was down today. All right, what do you want? If it's Matt Swanson for that Ryan Fernandez spot, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I think there's merit to it. Like I said, historically, Ollie takes some time to warm up to a reliever, especially. I mean, it was true last year. We saw this with Ryan Fernandez, actually, at the beginning of last season when we went a while and Oliver Marmol didn't throw him into the fire right away. And then it turns out one of the more reliable relievers. So maybe that would be the lesson that should be learned is like, some point you got to trust a guy in a spot, but they go to Fernandez. It was a terrible spot to put him into, but it's what you had to do, and he gives up the home run.
And here's the thing. The moment that Matt Swanson gets thrown into the bottom of the 8th inning in a tie game, and he's the one that gives up the 3-run homer, we're doing the same thing. Marmol, what are you thinking? Marmol, what are you doing? Like right. That's exactly what happened. That's what
You're
would
letting
have
a rookie do that in his second ever game? Why don't you get him?
This guy doesn't know what he's doing.
The thing about bullpen management and critiquing bullpen management, it's always easier to go back and say what a guy should have done rather than be able to do it in the moment. I'll give you an example. Last night, the Cardinals are locked in a tight one. They end up winning 10-4. The offense explodes, and we credit Nolan Gorman for the big swing. I want to also make sure to credit Wilson Contreras for a awesome walk that he drew in the 8th inning last night ahead of Gorman's 3-run double that cleared the bases and gave the Cardinals the lead. And he bat flipped it. I love that Wilson Contreras bat flipped a walk last night. That was fantastic. Okay, but my point, that's getting in the way of the larger point, where it's just the situation that it is for the Cardinals. You have to find a way to get Ryan Helsley into the game in that 9th inning because he hadn't pitched in so long. So they put him in last night, even though it's 10-4. The game was in the balance, and suddenly you put up a 6 spot, and it's like not a Helsley spot anymore. But they felt like, get him some work, and he'll still be available for Wednesday. He would have been available today, I have to believe, if the Cardinals had gotten a 1-run lead, 2-run lead, 3-run lead going into the bottom of the 9th inning. Of course, they didn't have that, and Helsley gets wasted is the way that it feels. But that's the explanation for that. Grant, you have a thought on this.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The explanation makes sense. Why he had to pitch yesterday. I completely agree with you, no matter the situation. I think I'm upset at the fact that Helsley did not pitch for so long that it was a must-pitch spot no matter the score yesterday in a 6-run game. I go back to Monday in a tie game, man on second and third, Jojo Romero was put in. I know Helsley is your closer, but he's also your best relief pitcher and your high-leverage man. Your team is reeling, losing 4 games in a row. Why not put in Helsley, and if he gets out of the jam, give him the 9th in a tie game, force extras, or you lose the game. Or maybe you're winning and you have him get 3 more outs in the 9th to close it out. The Cardinals ended up scoring 3 runs in the top of the 9th. And today I think I'm frustrated that I think it should have been Helsley again in the 8th instead of Ryan Fernandez. I would have liked to seen Helsley get out of that jam. Your team needs wins right now. He's well rested. I think Monday or today in the 8th inning with, I think, an out and runners on base, I would have liked to see Helsley strike out a guy, then get that third guy out. If anyone can do it on the roster, it's him. You don't trust anyone but him.
Right, because they were going to give him, going back to last Friday, if Fernandez didn't give up the home run to Lindor, they were going to give Helsley the 10th inning, which has an inherited runner by definition. Yes. There'd be a guy on second base. Normally, it's all about giving Helsley his own inning. Clean inning. He's not coming in as a fireman. He's done that in the past. And then 2024, we've had this conversation the beginning of the year. His role is defined now. He's the closer. He's coming into the closer situations, and that's pretty much it. You can use him in the 9th inning of a tie game at home because at that point there will never be a save situation in that game, so you're welcome to use him. They've done that. It happened in the first homestand of the year. We saw it happen. Other than that, they're not bringing him into an 8th inning. It's okay to be frustrated by that. If it sounds like I'm Cardinals PR, that's okay. I'm just telling you the facts. I'm right about this. This is the way they're going to use him, and they're insistent upon it. Believe me. So that understanding your point about the 8th inning, never going to happen. Coming into a game with runners on base like the rescue spot for Fernandez, never going to happen. It just isn't going to happen for him to start a clean 8th today, because that would have been maybe the argument. Is you say, well, he could start a clean 8th if he pitched yesterday in a meaningless spot, knowing that it wasn't going to preclude him from being available today. You could have him pitch a clean 8th today. Let's go down that path. Okay, who pitches the 9th inning? Because he's not going to go back-to-back and multiples. That's not going to happen. So he's not going to pitch the 8th, and then the Cardinals take the lead. Who closes it? Dear God in heaven, it looks disgusting when Ryan Fernandez has to be the closer that day and gives up the home run. So sometimes I think it's a coin flip. It's a toss-up, Andy, and that's why you don't normally, and correct me, Andy, if I'm wrong on this, you don't often hear me come on here and say, here's what they did. They really messed this up, and they needed to have done this. They needed to have, definitively, because there's always gray area.
Right.
Here's an example where I am going to come on here and say they messed it up.
Okay.
They messed it up on Sunday night when they didn't option Ryan Fernandez to AAA Memphis. You needed to make that roster move before this series, because we just finished a full series in which he didn't appear until the very bitter end of that series, and it was like Waka against Ishikawa in the playoffs against the Giants is what it feels like. Obviously, a lot less on the line in this situation, but it's that notion of can't find a spot for a guy, here we go, we got to use him, here we go. And then it's like, well, wait a minute. That wasn't an ideal spot to put him into, a guy that you're trying to build the confidence of. And Oliver Marmol talked about that post-game today and said, you try to find those lower leverage spots for him. You'd like to be able to do that. There was a lower leverage spot for him. It was yesterday's 9th inning, 10-4. If you were going to put him in there, I know you wanted to get work for Helsley. Didn't have to. Could have seen that the inning was going the way that it was going, and you fire up Ryan Fernandez and pitch him in that 9th inning to get him a spot, and he still should have been available for today if that were going to have been the case. You can discuss that. You can debate that. I'm just saying, these things do kind of pile up on itself. And Oliver Marmol was completely insistent. Going back to the Mets series, I believe we're still talking about Friday night. Lindor's home run, walk-off against Ryan Fernandez. Insistent that was not a Helsley spot because they were tied in the 9th inning and they didn't have the lead. So that's it. Basically, by then, you know that one guy's pitching the 9th, the other's pitching the 10th. They were saving Helsley for a potential 10th. Because he could maybe get the outs when you have the ghost man on second base. He's a strikeout pitcher. He might be able to get through that situation. And once the Cardinals didn't score in the top of the 9th, you knew that you'd have to use both pitchers. And so, therefore, they were saving Helsley for the spot later. That being said, that sort of leads to have to pitch him last night instead of Fernandez. So there's some issues there. But the bottom line is Ryan Fernandez, I thought, coming out of Sunday, was clearly in need of some time in AAA Memphis. You've got other relievers down there. Maybe the field staff and the management staff doesn't trust those pitchers as much as they do Ryan Fernandez, and that's all well and good. Right now, though, anybody watching can tell you that Ryan Fernandez is not right. He needs a spell where he can get right so that he can get back to helping the Cardinals like he did in 2024. That they didn't option him is how they had to manage this whole series from a bullpen perspective very carefully, and you can't afford to do what I've said to Grant they're doing with Ryan Helsley, which is they've got these rules for the way you're going to use him. You can't do that and also not trust Matt Swanson when he's out there available to you, and also be stubborn and persistent about Ryan Fernandez until it's too late. You can't do all of those things. You've got to be more flexible in one regard, and to me, it was Sunday night optioning Ryan Fernandez, not because I hate him, not because I think he stinks, but because I think right now that's what he needed, and that's what the St. Louis Cardinals needed, and not doing it cost them this game today. Plus Andy's thing about they couldn't score any runs.
But that's the thing. And that's all well and good, and they could have set themselves up a lot better bullpen-wise for this series the way they did. Cardinal fans, tell us what you think about this series now that it's done. The Cardinals fall short again of getting a series win on the road. 875-KTGR if you want to call or text us. And it's not like they have a shortage of options. I mean, there's options out there for who you can bring up that it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to have them here because they're on the 40-man roster and they've gotten big league time before. Would you have been in favor of Riley O'Brien being brought up in that spot for Ryan Fernandez, or even Ryan Ludus, who's been here before? Those are two right there that you could have today if the Cardinals wanted to, and probably will have this weekend if they know what they're doing with this.
That's what's interesting is post-game, the sentiment from Ollie was sort of, it was this notion that nothing's coming to save us. We've got to get through it with these guys that we have and be able to lean on them and trust them. We're going to find out, right? What that actually was. Is that just kind of manager speak because you have to be able to trust in your guys, but he also isn't the person that is charged with making that decision. He can have input on that decision, and I believe that he has. I think that's why Ryan Fernandez was still there. But I also believe that at the end of the day, there is somebody that purportedly is running this team from a baseball operations perspective until the end of October. I'm told his name is John Mozeliak. It's time for him probably to wake up and make a roster move. Your manager may not like it. That's what's needed, in my opinion. And look, it's fine if I'm wrong and they keep Fernandez and he looks great on Friday night. I would love nothing more. It doesn't negate the fact that you cost the Cardinals the game against the Atlanta Braves. Whatever happens next doesn't necessarily supersede what we've just seen. And to your question, Andy, Riley O'Brien, Ryan Ludus, take your pick of who you want. Is it because Riley O'Brien pitched for Memphis on Sunday and so did Ludus, and they both had a scoreless inning, so like they weren't available Monday, so they figure, what's one extra day where Fernandez will be back available and then we'll get it. I don't know the why behind it. The answer to your question is yes, I would have taken O'Brien, I would have taken Ludus, I would have taken Nick Anderson. Like, it doesn't matter. I think the kid just needs a spell. Ryan Fernandez needs what Chris Roycroft is getting, some time to work down below. If Roycroft had been down for 15 days, I don't think he quite has been. But if that's been the case, then bring him back up instead of Fernandez right now, because it's just looking the way that it's looking for Fernandez. In this series, it didn't change. And again, if you have a guy like that where you're trying to wait for the perfect spot to put him into, and then you decide the spot is the one we saw today where one pitch he gives up 3 runs that he didn't put on the base paths, that's a tough spot to put the player in that you're trying to defend so hard. I'm not killing Ollie for doing it with Fernandez. I just don't think Fernandez should have been on the team in the first place to be in that spot where you had to manage around the fact all weekend that you didn't trust him for the spots. And also, Matt Swanson was sitting there too. So, like, there's different ways to have done it. I think you paint yourself into a self-inflicted corner with a lot of the decisions that were ultimately made, though.
Riley O'Brien has struck out 14 batters in 7 innings so far. That's AAA.
Look, he would have been my top choice, and I would have said, I don't give a damn that he pitched Sunday, so maybe he's not available Monday.
Right.
You know what? He'll be available Tuesday, and guess what? Ryan Fernandez was available Tuesday. Who do I think can get me outs right now compared to one or the other? It's Riley O'Brien.
Yeah.
And is that 100% true? No. Every time Riley O'Brien comes up, he looks like a baby deer that has never thrown a strike before, and he's throwing balls. So, like, he's got some really good raw talent. I've been, like, captain of the Riley O'Brien fan club every spring the last couple of years, and then we don't really see it play out due to injuries or whatever the case would be. So we'll see if that ends up being somebody that's worth trusting. My take, the Cardinals clearly don't feel as strongly about him as we do on the outside and trust him that he could come in and be that guy to be in a spot like this because they just whatever their reasons is, they don't think he's that guy at this point. I don't think Ryan Fernandez in this week of April 23rd, 2025 is that guy at this point. I think by June 1st he's going to be, because I have faith that we saw it last year and he's going to do it again. But you have to live in the here and now, and you may think that Riley O'Brien doesn't have the goods comparatively. I think you have to find that out. Like, you're losing too many games because of the bullpen to be able to be that dang stubborn. That's my take. If they disagree, that's fine, but their prerogative is to win games, and mine is to occasionally be critical when they don't. And this is a time I'm choosing to go, hey, this looks just as insane as most of the fans think it does. They shouldn't have had Fernandez in that spot, man.
They shouldn't have. I also just don't think that it should blind you from the fact that the Cardinals scored 10 runs yesterday and won today. Like, that's, you gotta.
Life looks better when they
out.
Score 6 today against Bryce Elder, who stinks. That would have been nice.
And look, like, first inning, they get a guy on with 2 outs. I mean, Lars Nootbaar drew a walk, and then it was immediately a double play. But then Gorman walks, and then he gets the second on the wild pitch, and he gets driven in by Arenado, and then they get another guy on. It's like first and third, 2 outs. And
they had him on the ropes.
I heard Ricky Horton on the broadcast say, you better get while the getting's good. Like, his Elder was not sharp in that first inning.
Ricky's seen a game or two of baseball in his life. He knows what he's talking about.
I think he knows a little bit about baseball. So, again, it just seemed that was a chance for the Cardinals to get on the right foot. And they got 1 run out of it, but then Elder settled in because he has the ability to do that when he has 1 bad inning. And
when you take him off the hook.
Right, exactly.
That shouldn't have been a 1-run inning. You got to make that a crooked number. And that's why I love baseball, because we can sit here and talk about this game and say they lost a tight one, but it's not just because Ryan Fernandez gave up a home run. It's every bullpen guy other than EveryDeahy failing before that.
Yeah.
And it's an offense against a 7.20 ERA guy not scoring more than 1 run against him over the course of 6 innings. Those are the things that you have to contextualize when we talk about this team and this sport, that I like that we get an opportunity to kind of lay that out and say, look, it sucks that they're 10-15. It sucks that they lost this game. Let's talk about the reasons behind it instead of take the low-hanging fruit of, Oliver Marmol didn't know what order to put his pitchers in today. Baloney.
Yeah.
They didn't have the pitchers out there that were getting the job done. Why does he bring Kyle Leahy in every single game of a series this week? Because he's the only dang guy that they can trust to do it. And if it frustrates you that, well, in that case, why can't Ryan Helsley come in and pitch in some other spots? Fine to be frustrated by that. They've put that anchor down, though. Like, they're anchored to that with Helsley. They're anchored to Kyle Leahy right now because he's been so darn reliable, and you're allowed to do that. But you can't anchor to everything. You can't anchor to all these other things and say, I'm going to be stubborn. Ryan Fernandez is the guy to fix this. you can't have it all. You have to be able to concede some spots to get the most out of this unit right now. You can't have that and a 6-man rotation sometimes. You needed Steven Matz yesterday. He's a big reason they won last night because he was able to come in 2 2/3 inning of scoreless baseball. You didn't have him available today in the John King spot or in the Romero spot because he's a lefty that had to throw bulk yesterday because Palante didn't quite get it over the hump. They won that game in part because of Steven Matz. But you can't then anchor to, well, I have to have Ryan Fernandez because he's going to get me out of this spot next week. We'll see, man. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen or if they're going to option anybody. If it's a case where, we could really dive into the weeds on this, Andy. You could make the case, and I hate to kind of speculate because I would have the opportunity to maybe find this out a little bit, but I never would necessarily get the straight answer fully. But you could make an argument that in a year where it's a transition year and John Mozeliak knows he's out the door, Oliver Marmol still has a year of contract for next year that he's under contract for, but Chaim Bloom is eventually going to come in and get to shape this organization in the way that he sees fit. So if it's a situation where Mo knows he's going out the door, he also knows that Oli Marmol is his guy that he brought in. Mozeliak gave him that extension as a little bit of additional cover, knowing that the end was near for John Mozeliak. Is there a world in which Oli Marmol has a little bit of extra agency this year to say, I want Ryan Fernandez here because this is the way that I'm going to have my opportunity to show best to be able to prove that I am long for this job, which Brendan Schaeffer thinks is the case. I think Oliver Marmol is the man for this job. That being said, if he's got the agency to ask for Ryan Fernandez to stick around and it is granted that, okay, but it didn't work out this week in this series. And so the ability to adapt to that the next time is important. And again, I hesitate to even say all of that because I don't know for a fact that that's what happened, but I also understand that it's easy to see Oli Marmol is a big fan of what Ryan Fernandez can do. You just had to look to last year when he was the Kyle Leahy last year. Fernandez was being thrown into those spots, and man, he was nailing it. So if I'm Oli Marmol and I have that memory, why wouldn't I trust Ryan Fernandez? It makes perfect sense. But you also have to be in the here and now and where we are. And right now, Fernandez needs a spell, in my opinion, to be able to adjust at Memphis and figure things out so he can help this team this summer. That's my rant. We'll see what ends up happening, and we'll see what they do on Friday, if anything, as the Brewers come to town for a big series at home.